It is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart. In him ecstatic we take shelter of the lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma Mando Mui Savadana Mahati Mando Mui Savadana Mahati Jara prasare bhai e bhavatori ajay Jara prasare bhai e bhavatori ajay Krishna prapti hoy jahan hoite Krishna prapti hoy jahan hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koi Aikya Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koi Aikya Arna Koriyo Mane Asha Arna Koriyo Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati. Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati. Prasade Pure Sarva Asha. Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha. Sakurana Dilo Je Janme Janme Prabhu Se. Sakurana Dilo Je Janme Janme Prabhu Se. Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashita. Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashita. Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasha Jate. Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasha Jate. Mere Gai Jara Charito. Mere Gai Jara Charito. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janara Bandhu. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janara Bandhu. Lokana Lokera Jivana. Lokanath Lokera Jivana. Ha Prabhu Kara Daya Deho More Para Chaya. Ha Prabhu Kara Daya Deho More Para Chaya. Ebe Jasya Gusukti Bhuvana. Ebe Jasya Gusukti Bhuvana. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana. Tua Padaloila Shavana. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janara Bandhu. Lokanath Lokera Jivana. Srila Prabhupada Lokera Jivana. Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyarishatarine. Namaste Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyarishatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana, Jai Sachinandana, Gaura Hari. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. Oh, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. Krishna, 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 Hare. Krishna, 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 Hare. Krishna, 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 Rakshama. Krishna, 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 Pahima. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshama. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshama. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahima. Oh, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahima. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Hare Nama, Krishna Yarovaya Nama. Hari Hare Nama, Krishna Yarovaya Nama. Yarovaya Maravaya Kesavaya Nama. Yarovaya Maravaya Kesavaya Nama. Hari Gopal Govindaram Sri Madhusudan Giri Hari Gopinath Madan Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Siyadeta Sita Gaura Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Siyadeta Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavad Gita Sri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raguna Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raguna Hari Hare Nama, Krishna Yadavaya Nama. Yadavaya Maravaya Kesavaya Nama. Hey Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare.
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan. 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 Shri Govinda Gopinath Madana Mohan. Shri Govinda Gopinath Madana Mohan. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan. Oh, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajaka Ashtotar Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासारि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय, मायापुर धाम की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, नूरमनवेती धाम की जय, तुलसी महारानी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, यमुना माई की जय, गंगा माई की जय, श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। निताय गौ प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल, समवेता भक्त वृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Gauranga.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Chandan Yatra ki Jai. So these are qualities of Sri Krishna. Personal features can be divided into two. One feature is covered and the other feature is manifested. When Krishna is covered by different kinds of dress, his personal feature is covered. There is an example of his covered personal feature in Srimad Bhagavatam in connection with his Dwarka Leela, his residence in Dwarka as its king. Sometimes Lord Krishna began to play by dressing himself like a woman. Seeing this form, Uddhava said, "How wonderful it is that this woman is attracting my ecstatic love, exactly as Lord Krishna does. I think she must be Krishna covered by the dress of a woman." One devotee praised the bodily features of Krishna when he saw the Lord in his manifested personal feature. He exclaimed, "How wonderful is the personal feature of Lord Krishna! How his neck is just like a conch shell. His eyes are so beautiful, and as though they themselves were encountering the beauty of a lotus flower. His body is just like the tamal tree, very blackish. His head is protected with a canopy of hair. There are the marks of Srivatsa on his chest, and he is holding his conch shell. By such beautiful bodily features, the enemy of the demon Madhu has appeared so pleasing that he can bestow upon me transcendental bliss simply by my seeing his transcendental qualities." Srila Rupa Goswami, after consulting various scriptures, has enumerated the transcendental qualities of the Lord as follows: beautiful features of the entire body, marked with all auspicious characteristics, extremely pleasing, effulgent, strong, ever youthful, wonderful linguist, truthful, talks pleasingly, fluent, highly learned, highly intelligent, a genius, artistic, extremely clever, expert, grateful, firmly determined, an expert judge of time and circumstances. He sees and speaks on the authority of the Vedas or scriptures, pure, self-controlled, steadfast, forbearing, forgiving, and so on. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. So today is Chandan Yatra Day. Once a year we do this. So we have a lot of devotees who have worked on grinding chandan over the last few months. And I'd like to thank them all for taking part, especially this last week here. We had a marathon where devotees were grinding in the temple room, which is actually very important for us to have enough chandan to cover all the deities. So I want to thank them very much for that. And our Sunday feast program would be as usual at 4:15. So at that time we'll see the deities in their chandan and also all the flower dresses that the young girls are preparing for the deities actually. And Tamohar Prabhu will give the Sunday feast lecture today. Here are the devotees who have assisted their guru in dressing the deity. Sri Sri Radhesham were dressed by Mother Shama Priya, Chota Radhesham by Raghunath Prabhu, Sri Sri Krishna Balaram, Mother Shanti, Chota Krishna Balaram by Mother Madhuri Gopi, Sri Sri Gaurnitai, Mother Kaveri, Chota Gaurnitai by Govinda Mohini Mataji, and the Gurus and Lord Nrsimhadev by Krishna Kripa Moy Prabhu. Also today is, because it's Sunday feast day, there's a lot of vegetable cut-up to be done. So if you can help, you can go in the kitchen, you can do it there. You can hear the memories of Srila Prabhupada also in the kitchen, or you can collect some vegetables, bring it here in the temple room, and you can cut in here while you listen. Hare Krishna.
The words that he was using. And I didn't know that he was, when he was a young boy, he went to Scottish Churches College in Calcutta. Although later on when I was able to get his association while massaging him, and Srila Prabhupada was getting to know me, he was asking questions where I was coming from. That's the first thing he asked me, was where I was coming from, and I said, Scotland. And then he started to reminisce that when he was being educated, he was educated by, all his teachers were Scottish, and that he learnt, he had to study the Bible, he learnt the Catechism, and he asked me if I knew any Scottish lords. And I said, no, I don't personally know any Scottish lords. And he said, oh, I met one, Lord Zetland. He came to our college in Calcutta. And then he asked me if I studied British history. And I said, oh yes, I was, my whole education was in Scotland. So then he asked me a few questions. He asked me, when was the Battle of Trafalgar? And I said, 1805. And then he asked me, when was the Battle of Waterloo? And I said, 1815. He said, oh, you know British history just like I know British history. So he was kind of testing. And also he was asking things like, how far was Glasgow from London? And I told him approximately 400 miles. How long did it take to go there by train? I said approximately 8 hours. So when he was relating like that with me, it put me very much at my ease, because I really didn't know how to start up any conversation with Srila Prabhupada when I was in the process of massaging him, and that's the way he won my heart over too, because he was relating to me in a way that I could appreciate, and I could talk with him. It wasn't a philosophical discussion, the first meeting. Although when I got the opportunity to ask him a question, which was after leaving the airport and arriving at John Lennon's estate, Prabhupada gave a kirtan in a very philosophical class. But my single most, uppermost desire at that time was to ask when I could get initiation, because that's all I was thinking about. So at the end of class, and Prabhupada asked for questions, I stuck up my hand and he said yes, and I said, when can I take initiation? Nothing to do with the class. I mean, it was nothing to do with the class, but Srila Prabhupada said, that is another thing, that we will see. But it was about a week later that Prabhupada actually got around to performing initiation.
Well, I remember when I was asked to put the garland on Prabhupada. And I always remember that when Prabhupada came through the doors of the lounge, it was that his smile was like, as I say, oceanic. It was just an oceanic smile. And I could just, straight away, I actually froze, but I remember actually thinking that this person's not in this dimension. You know, even as I was only young then, I was only just turned 18, but I could tell this person's not in this world, he's not on this planet. And I froze, I couldn't put the garland on Prabhupada. So I was just standing there looking at him. And Prabhupada, of course, was just beaming. And I wasn't the only garland, but devotees were coming up to him, but I just froze. I didn't pay my obeisance or anything, I just froze. And Prabhupada walked straight past me, and I was standing there with this big garland. And I'm just looking at this person, and then I ran up to Prabhupada and slipped the garland on him. But it was kind of funny because I was obviously the reception committee with the garland, but I actually just froze. I didn't know what to do, you know. And I remember that, particularly Prabhupada's smile just knocked me out. And I remember one thing was that all the devotees were crying practically. That's the fascinating thing about it. I looked around, and there was a lot of devotees there, and a lot of people were crying. And I think that's just made me even more kind of amazed at the potency of this person. You know, that someone could walk through a door and cause everyone to cry. You know, it was just fascinating.
I was very struck by the seriousness of Srila Prabhupada there on the poster that was a poster of Prabhupada in the temple in Manchester, a black and white poster, picture of Prabhupada sitting on his bed in Berry Place, taken by Gurudas. And I used to think, why does he look so serious? Why isn't he laughing like the other gurus do? And then it suddenly hit me that life itself is so serious. And Prabhupada's gravity and the depth of his compassion came across from this picture.
When he was once, this was a time before he was at the manor, he was leaving to go to the airport, and I was sitting in a van waiting to follow him. So I was sitting on the right, in the driver's seat, like this, pranams, and he came past very, very slowly in the car on my right, lower, and he was on my side of his car. So he went past and he looked up at me like that and returned my gesture like this, which I was astounded by. And then our eyes met, and the car was moving very, very slowly still, but our eyes were actually in contact for about, probably about 2 seconds. And that's probably the most memorable experience of my life, that glance that I got. Because it seemed as if time stopped. And what I felt was that Prabhupada saw thousands of births. He looked like it was a timeless experience, and it was like in another dimension. And it felt as if he'd seen thousands of births of nonsense. And not only seeing, but I felt complete acceptance of me with all that nonsense. And then he was gone. But that created an incredible link between me and Prabhupada, which I've never forgotten. I cannot forget it.
Whenever there were large morning walks, I got to go anyway in the van. But this one particular morning stands out in my mind very strongly because I think it's probably the first time I ever spoke to His Divine Grace. I was very nervous of Srila Prabhupada. I was a young devotee, and I thought only Americans could speak to him. At that time, it was all the American devotees were interacting. And we were all younger devotees, the Welsh and English devotees, and felt somewhat more intimidated. So I was afraid to speak to Prabhupada. And I also thought, well, what's there to say? I mean, he's speaking, I'm just listening, basically. But on this one particular morning, I felt, he said something, and I felt inclined to ask my first question from Srila Prabhupada. And it was in relation to him walking through St. James's Park. There's some nice photographs in black and white that I see sometimes. With that Nandan Swami, myself, Prabhupada, and I think the driver, one of the devotees, there were just 3 or 4 of us walking. And there were some young hippies sleeping on the park benches in their sleeping bags, and as Prabhupada walked past them, he commented, by good fortune, these can all come to Krishna consciousness. And he carried on walking, and just this word, good fortune, kept going around in my mind. Does this mean that there's some kind of luck involved here, that somebody gets Krishna consciousness, somebody else doesn't, by some throw of the dice? And in my neophyte stage, I was trying to understand what did Prabhupada mean by good fortune, specifically. So, after a few hundred yards, I plucked up the courage and tried to phrase my question in such a way that wasn't offensive, very nervously asked Srila Prabhupada, when you say by good fortune, can you explain that, please? Because I understand from reading your literature and hearing you speak that nothing happens by chance. That was my angle. So, by good fortune, what do you mean? So he continued to walk for a little bit, and all of a sudden he stopped dead in his tracks. And frightened me, actually, because he turned straight into my face with about a few inches apart, maybe 12 inches, something. And with his walking stick hand, he picked up his walking stick and he pointed right in my face. And he said, "We are their good fortune." So I understood from that I had to preach in the future. So, and I've meditated on that for years and years and years, but actually, Prabhupada, in his humility, never said, "I am their good fortune," but "we are their good fortune." So I began to pick up the understanding more deeply about the importance of spreading Krishna consciousness.
I'd come back from India as a hippie in the early 70s, actually 69, about 1970. And funnily enough, I was attempting to write a book then, based on the experiences I'd had with the hallucinogenic drugs in India. It was called Ahead of His Time, Self-Realized States Through the Use of Lysergic Acid in India. So at that time, the devotees had just had a big hit in the charts with the record of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And so I thought what a great idea it would be to have a chapter featuring an interview with the devotees to get their angle on the absolute truth, as it were. So when I finally found out the location of the temple, I went along there and I met Kulasheka Prabhu, who was an early disciple. And I made known my intentions, and he said, "Well, our spiritual master is upstairs. Why don't you talk to him?" I said, "Great, why not?" So then we went upstairs. Prabhupada's room was on the first floor in Berry Place. And so before we just entered the room, he said to me, because he told me Prabhupada, he's a great personality and we offer respects and what have you, so if you do a little pranams and what have you, as you go in, out of respect. I said, "Sure, fair enough." And having been in India, I'd seen all the sadhu babas and what have you, doing dandavats and what have you. So anyway, on entering the room, Prabhupada was sitting on the other side of the room with his back to the window behind a low desk on a cushion, as we came to know, that's how he would sit. And he was writing something, and he peered over at me. He had his glasses down his nose and said, "Hare Krishna." And somehow I just felt so overwhelmed to be in his presence that I just automatically fell to the floor like a stick, as I'd seen devotees do in the temple just downstairs. And then I just simply lay there and froze, and I was thinking, well, what do I do now? When do I get up? And so a few moments passed, and then Kulasheka kind of nudged me and said, "Okay, you get up now." Yeah. So then
So I'd had all these preconceived questions I was going to ask, because at that time, you must understand that LSD was my God. You know, I'd interviewed prior to that an associate of Timothy Leary, so I was very much into, you know, glorifying the use of LSD for achieving self-realization. So when I sat there and I was facing Srila Prabhupada directly, I went blank. I was just, as I say, overwhelmed. I was speechless. Somehow or other, I'd just gotten a book called The Nectar of Devotion. And I remember reading in that how the pure devotee's eyes are anointed with the pulp of love, the salve of... and looking at Prabhupada's eyes, I could see this. And I could see he was like unlike anyone I'd ever seen in my life. And as I say, I was speechless. So after we had exchanged pleasantries, some moments passed, and then Prabhupada began talking, saying how unfortunate it was that the youth of today were trying to become self-realized through the use of hallucinogenic drugs. And I was just totally taken aback. I couldn't believe it, because this is exactly what I was going to challenge Prabhupada on. So I was just blown away at that point, and all my thoughts of writing a book went out the window. So then after that, kind of Prabhupada broke the ice a bit by talking and saying something that went straight, you know, I could see that. He could see actually what I was thinking. So then I plucked up some courage and I began to ask a question. And I think the first question I asked the Prabhupada was, what are the characteristics of a pure devotee? And Prabhupada expounded for about 20 minutes just on that question alone. And I can't remember too much more about the interview. I think I was with Prabhupada for about a full hour, and there was Kulashekar was the only other devotee in the room at the time. But I remember Prabhupada's closing statement, and he looked at me straight in the eyes and he said, man is the architecture of his own fortune, so you make your fortune now. Whatever is done. Now start a new chapter in your life, and in the next life go back home, back to Godhead. And those words are still ringing in my ears to this day.
He said, so you know what the four principles are? And I explained yes. And you're chanting minimum 16 rounds, and I said yes. So on that premise, he accepted me. And then when he gave me my name, he said, your name from now on is Dhananjaya Das. He said, this is the name for Arjuna. He said, Dhananjaya means conqueror of wealth. He said, you will have no difficulty in acquiring wealth. He said, actually there's so much wealth, and he put his hands up and he said, there's so much wealth everywhere. He said, money is flying in all directions. He said, we simply have to learn the art of catching it. That's what he told me.
And another time we were doing initiations, and at the initiations, Prabhupada was very grave. You know, when he was chanting on the beads, he was chanting on all these beads, and he was very, very grave. And I remember I was sitting just below the Vyasa-san. I was thinking, Prabhupada's so grave, you know? And yet then when one boy came up, Prabhupada was holding up the beads like that. And so Prabhupada said to him, he said, so what are the four regulative principles? So the boy said, no intoxication, no gambling, no meeting, no illicit sex. And then Prabhupada said, so which one do you like the best? And the boy went bright red, you know? He went completely red. And I just thought that was really funny, because Prabhupada had been so grave. It was so serious an occasion, and yet he kind of completely talked like that.
He asked me what the four principles were, and he said, do you vow to chant 16 rounds a day? And I remember saying, yes, Prabhu. I didn't address Prabhupada as Prabhupada. With all sincerity, I said, yes, Prabhu. Prabhupada, yeah, good. I think Prabhupada saw past the lack of etiquette. You could see perhaps a little sincerity there. I was being very serious when I said it. Looking back, he should have chastised me very seriously, but he wasn't.
We were talking with Srila Prabhupada, and Nandan was remembering that he'd worked in the... Prabhupada was talking about Ugra Karma and how people work so hard and they get no result for it, etc., etc., and how difficult it is for them. So Nandan Swami began to speak about how he used to work in a canning factory in California before he was a devotee for some period of time. And he began to describe in detail, some detail at least, what it was like to work in this hellish factory. So I'd been around a couple of years now, I was a bit more confident, so I felt, even though a little shy and nervous, I still thought, well, I have a little something to say here, and I began to talk to Prabhupada about how I worked in a steel factory for a few weeks, or a month or so, when I was about 19, 20, a year or so before I met Srila Prabhupada. And I began to describe it in some detail. There was this huge press, and there were two people working on this press, and our only job was to lift up the metal guard of the press and take one huge sheet of steel and put it into the press and pull down the guard and press the button, and this big press would come down and make this piece of steel into a shape of a bath. And then we'd walk around the other side of the press, huge hydraulic press, and lift up the guard and take out the bath and throw it onto a conveyor belt and pull down the guard and walk around the other side and lift up the guard and put in the steel and pull down this guard and press the button, and the press would come down and go around the other. So I was speaking, and Prabhupada was listening and watching and smiling, not smiling, but listening carefully. And I said that then I was doing quite well, Prabhupada. They invited me to work night shift. You got extra money on night shift. So that's what I thought, that I was such a good worker. Actually, it was nobody wanted to do it. But there was a little extra pay, so I thought I'd try. And I found after 1 or 2 weeks that I nearly had a nervous breakdown. I was actually working all night. I couldn't sleep during the day. And because I was such a sense gratifier, I would always go out in the night with my friends, so then I would go from there to work. So after a couple of weeks of this, I almost had a nervous breakdown from the strain. And Prabhupada listened, and then he was thinking, and he said, actually, that's because in your last life you were all Brahmins. And everyone was sort of looking. There were about 10 people in the room. And he said, actually, otherwise, how could you so quickly come to the platform of Krishna consciousness? And then he stopped and he thought for a little longer. He was leaning on his cushions. He was in a very relaxed mood, leaning back on his cushions with this table. I think it was this same table in front of him at the time. And he was relaxed. He was leaning back and thinking. And then he said, actually, my Guru Maharaj has ordered you all to take birth to help me spread this mission. So everyone's ears are popping up. And then he looked around across everyone in the room, and he finished. I was sitting here with Nandan, and he looked across everyone, and he finished on me because I was the last one to speak to him. And he said, and now we are all together again. And as he said that, he just beamed, and he had his hand behind his head as he did, Prabhupada. And now we are all together again. And he beamed, and everyone just went, Jai, Prabhupada. And some devotees began to cry.
Well, see, Shyam Sundar was very eager to have this very place transformed into a proper temple. And so the building became like a construction site. And he mentioned to George it was very difficult for us to live there because there was so much dust, and there was so much noise because he had to put in reinforced metal beams and all kinds of work had to be done there. And he said it was very difficult for the devotees to live in that building while that construction work was going on. And could he help us in any way? And he said, well, I'll speak to John Lennon because he's just acquired a big property and he might be able to put you up. Because at that time George was living in Isha in Surrey, and he didn't have a big house, but he knew that John's house was much bigger. He hadn't moved into Friar Park in Henley. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have invited us to stay with him. But it was just due to the circumstances. So John agreed. He thought it was a really good idea. In fact, he was incredibly favorable. He offered us 5 acres of land. So this particular estate had 76 acres, and he wasn't into farming or agriculture or anything like that. And he said that we could have 5 acres of land. When Prabhupada was told this, Srila Prabhupada said that we should utilize this land for growing all our fresh vegetables and fruits. And he said that anything that was left over that we couldn't use for ourselves, for our own consumption, we should take into the local market in London. And he said we should take it in by bullock cart. And when Prabhupada said this, I said, but Prabhupada, there's so many lorries going in, because at that time, of course, Covent Garden was very close to where Bury Place was in Bloomsbury. Covent Garden was just down, it's still, of course, there, near where the Opera House is in Bow Street, Magistrates Court. And so I said, but the lorries will get there before the bullock cart. And because we were 25 miles, at least 25, if not more, miles outside of, London. And Prabhupada said, no. He said, the bullock cart should leave the night before. And they will walk all night, and they will reach the garden before the market garden before the lorries arrive. So in 1969, this was Prabhupada's vision. He wanted us to train up animals, hitch them to a cart, and take fresh market produce into central London. He also said that we should hold a big Rath Yatra festival, starting from John Lennon's estate, and go in procession all the way into central London, stopping at different little towns and villages on the way.
In St. James's Park, Prabhupada would constantly be pointing out things, different things. I mean, there was one time we were in a park, and there was that now there was that story which I remember, but there was some bird droppings, and Prabhupada was asking, he was saying, what is this? And everyone was kind of looking at the bird droppings and thinking, well, they're kind of thinking, well, maybe it probably means some tea leaf formations, like we could esoterically look at it. And Prabhupada said, what does this tell you? And everyone was kind of bewildered. And then Prabhupada said, this tells you that the same bird is sleeping on the same branch every night. So Prabhupada said, even the bird becomes attached to the partner. So Prabhupada said, so be careful.
In the beginning, John was much more interested in Yoko. In fact, one evening, John and Yoko invited Prabhupada over to listen to a song that he had just recorded. This is just after his 29th birthday. And he made a song called Cold Turkey. And of course, the significance of that song was that he was actually having withdrawal symptoms coming off heroin, because, and I saw this myself, he was, himself and his wife were shooting up heroin constantly while we were there. And that's why Yoko Ono had so many miscarriages. Because she was also really anxious to have a child by John Lennon. And I had to clean up an office one time in the main house, and when I moved a filing cabinet, I came across all these, hypodermic needles. And syringes were just lying around. Also, they had some very unsavory characters living at their place. They had someone called Alexander Trocky, and he was a Scotsman, but he had moved to New York and he'd written a book about his visions on heroin. And also William Burroughs was invited, and William Burroughs wrote a book called The Soft Machine. He was living in North Africa. So they were really dabbling a lot in that drug culture, looking for identity or something. They were looking for something. And that's why we were there too. And of course, they had made a record called John and Yoko Forever, because Yoko's whole consciousness was fixed that she wanted some or another to live with John forever, for eternity. And of course, when Yoko asked this question of Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, "This is impossible." He said, "At death, immediately you are separated." Then she lost all interest. It was like a private invitation. There was Srila Prabhupada and his secretary, his servant, Purushottam. But Trivikram and myself knew about this meeting. And we also knew the layout of the house, because we'd also been stripping paint from the walls, the wooden boards, because it was all beautiful oak paneling in the main living room. And there was French windows leading out into the garden. So what we did was, without Prabhupada's knowing, without John Lennon's knowing, we had, in the dark, gone over to the French windows, and although the curtains were drawn, they weren't completely closed. It was like a little slit, and we could see into the room. And also, by the French windows, John Lennon had put up all his recording equipment. There was an Ampex machine, because he wanted Prabhupada to hear the master tape, the master recording of this song. And Prabhupada had also been recording. He had been recording some bhajans, and these were accompanied by harmonium and tampura. So we saw the scene through the slit in the curtains, that Prabhupada came into that room, and he was invited to sit down in a very large, comfortable sofa along with Purushottam, which was at the other end of the room. And Yoko was sitting on a chair next to Prabhupada, and then John said, "So I've made this recording, I'd like you to hear it." And he came over to where the equipment was, and he started playing around with the knobs and dials. And it started to move, but then all of a sudden, he couldn't get it to work. There was no sound coming out. The tape was moving, but there was no sound coming out. And we could, because we were facing him, and he was facing us, although he couldn't see us, because we were in pitch dark, and he was in this, in this bright room. We could see he was really getting frustrated, because there was no sound coming out of his equipment. And after a minute or so, Prabhupada realized he was having difficulty, and he said, "So it seems you're having trouble, but I have also done some recording, and I have brought my tape recording machine, and that's working. It's a little Euro portable." And he told Purushottam to start it up, and so instead of Prabhupada having to hear this horrific song, I don't know if you've heard this song, it's a horrific song. He was spared that song, and he was able to play his music to John Lennon. So John had to retire from his equipment and sit down beside, near Yoko Ono and listen. And then shortly after that, after a few minutes conversation, Prabhupada said, "So now I have to go back. I have some translation work to do." And then he left the room. And then as he was coming round, we jumped out of the bushes and paid our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada rubbed us on our backs as we were paying our obeisances. And he went, "Jai," he said, "So, you saw?"
There was one particular morning walk when very few of us were actually with Prabhupada. It was here at Bhaktivedanta Manor. And there were about 5 of us. And for the first third or so of the walk, Prabhupada didn't speak. He was just chanting on his japa. And then he reached the top of the road, where the road turns off down up towards the right, just past Round Bush. And Prabhupada asked us a few questions. He said, he first of all started explaining how the living entities they reflect the mystic powers that Krishna has. Krishna is full of mystic powers, but the living entities, they also have mystic powers. Just like the frog. Like I said, the frog has yogic powers. You bury him in the ground, he will not die. I was walking next to Prabhupada. I said, but Prabhupada, the frog, he breathes through his skin. I said, no, he has yogic powers. It's interesting. Since then, I've read of frogs and toads buried in solid stone for goodness knows how many tens of thousands, perhaps even millions of years. Quarrymen cracking open a stone, and a live frog or a live toad comes out. So they're actually having mystic powers to be buried for so long.
I remember one story, and I just read it confirmed in Hari's third part of his diary. There I organized the Janmashtami, and I think it was the first time that we'd arranged to have paying for some prasadam. And, you know, generally we had a big booth and there would be prasadam distributed everywhere. But this one year I thought, well, why not make some little extra prasadam special and then charge somebody who doesn't want to take, you know, the basic rice, chapati and sabji. They may want some pizzas or something, chips or something different. And we're not able to serve prasadam the whole time, so we'll keep... So anyhow, I made this arrangement for a little... Well, somebody did, but I was president, so I was feeling responsible with it. And later on, I was up in Prabhupada's room, and there was darshan, kirtan, and at the end, so Prabhupada said, any questions? And one guest quite strongly began to criticize and complain that why you are selling prasadam? Prasadam is prasadam, it should be given away. So my heart started pounding, I panicked, you know, I'm standing at the back. And Prabhupada is looking, and he looks around, and he said, actually, and then Prabhupada said to him, I think Hari's got the exact word for word, but basically Prabhupada said, if we don't charge you, then you'll never give anything. So I felt completely vindicated that it was okay, to, you know, to sell some prasadam at the temple. In Hari's book, Prabhupada says something that actually you are meant to give to support, but you don't give, therefore we charge you something. But otherwise you'll never give anything. So that was quite, he had to be quiet then after that. But he was, I remember the Indian gentleman, he was a particularly complaining type. He was always there though, he always used to come regularly. So I thought I was a little nervous in case Prabhupada took issue with me that we were selling prasadam. But he accepted that was okay.
One time we were going past Buckingham Palace. So we were very proud at that time that one boy had joined who was part of the Queen's Guards. You know, the guys who wear the big furry hats. So as we were passing the palace, we were in a taxi with Prabhupada. So we looked over and we said, Prabhupada, one of the Queen's personal guards has joined. And then Prabhupada said, oh, so what about the Queen?
George asked if he should join and move into the temple in Sheva. And Prabhupada said no. He said, what you're doing through your music is much more important. He said, you're already a devotee of Krishna, so you continue. And he was talking about some music he had written for a singer called Lakshmi Shankar, Ravi Shankar's sister. And there was one song entitled Krishna, Where Are You? And Prabhupada listened to that recording in George's presence, and he said, this is our Gaudiya Vaishnava mood. He said, this is very correct, that we should be crying out, Krishna, where are you? We shouldn't think that we have captured Krishna, that we know who is Krishna. And he said, this is how you can serve our society the best. Another time when we went to George Harrison's house, this is after a program at Reading. Reading was a city nearby, Henley. And that's where that famous photograph was taken in the grounds of George Harrison's property. We went inside the house because when we came there, we couldn't find, or Shamsundar couldn't find where George was. But Shamsundar knew the layout of the house and knew which room we should go to. So we all went there. We went to that room and waited for George. And as we were waiting, it was getting dark. And then finally, George arrived, and he came with a big bouquet of flowers and a big basket of fruit. Because he'd never come empty-handed, and he'd always want to bring something for Srila Prabhupada. So he'd actually been out, doing this, getting some gifts for Srila Prabhupada. And he presented these to Srila Prabhupada, and he paid full dandavats to Srila Prabhupada. And then Srila Prabhupada said, the purpose of this human form of life is to leave this world of dark and go back to the world of light. And as he was saying this, the room was getting, because there was no light on it, was getting darker and darker and darker, and Prabhupada was emphasizing this point. Prabhupada would always be expert at using nature, any situation that he'd find himself in. And he's saying, this is the world of dark. He said, this world requires illumination. And the only illumination we have is from the sun and the moon. So without the sunshine, there would be no life, there would be no light. And of course, when the sun sets, then we need to call upon artificial illumination, electricity, fire. So, but in the world of light, there's no need for any kind of artificiality. So this is where we all wish to live, in the world of light, not in the world of dark. So he just was constantly emphasizing this particular point. And George was very much appreciating.
And then he said,